Okay, the energy crisis, cost of living, the economy crash. I think it's all very important, and I think it's something that needs to be said over more than one video, um, because there's a lot more to unpack than what people talk about, what's said in the street, what people say so flippantly about it. Because we are very flippant about the cost of living crisis. We all talk about the concept of, oh, we've got to decide whether or not we're going to heat our homes or feed our families. We've got to decide, if we're going to put gas in the car or go shopping or top up the gas and the electric or pay the bills. All you do is, and they're very flippant remarks for something that is so detrimental to all of us. And if you actually take into account every single one of those very, very flippant remarks and listen to what it actually means, when people go, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to eat or heat the house this week. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get gas in the car or feed my kids. And they are just words. But words are so important and they have a lot of meaning behind them. Can you drive to work this week or do you heat your house? Can you heat your house this week or do you feed yourself? Why is it said with such flippancy? Why are people so blasé when they say this kind of stuff? It's a rhetoric. It's just something they just say now. It's like it's not important or doesn't mean that much. The reality is, if you're over Christmas, my friend, she had to decide whether she was going to pay a bill or give her daughter a Christmas present so that she could buy her daughter a couple of Christmas presents and go shopping for Christmas. Do I pay a bill this month or do I get my daughter something nice and then go shopping so we can eat over Christmas? There should never have been choices she should have had to make. It should never have been a choice. It should never have had to have been a decision she should make. It should never be a decision anyone should have to make. We all know that Christmas isn't about material things, but parents like to give something, a present to their kids. They do, because they're their kids. But when they have to make that kind of decision, you know what it's doing up here compared to what they're actually just saying, as if it's, not that important. See, I looked up a few things and I went back and I wanted to see exactly the timelines of, well, not the exact timelines because that would have done my head in, but I looked back a bit to find out realistically when it all really started, because I assumed the economy crash happened last year around the same time as the rising energy prices and when the grocery prices went through the roof and the gas prices went through the roof, and they all kind of seemed to go all together, and it did. It felt like that. Well, I looked it all up and I went through some of the numbers. It actually started in 2021. In 2021, through COVID, as COVID kind of plateaued a bit, and we all came out of isolation and started getting back into a normal routine, you kind of saw the rise of the food prices. The shopping chains had upped the prices of all the shopping pretty much everywhere by that point. You know, and I don't know about you, but I'd noticed that. I'd noticed that my shopping had kind of gone through the roof a bit. You know, I mean, it's one thing when you're on your own or it's just you and your partner, and it doesn't matter what you eat and how little you pay for it. But if you've got a family to feed, you notice how big a leap you're taking every time you go shopping. You know, and I did start noticing it. You know, when my shopping prices went up by like 20 quid. Yeah, and I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell? I'm not even getting that much. Where the hell did that come from? Yeah, and I didn't even consider the thought that it meant anything, that it was anything more than the fact that it's normal for the prices to go up. But it was quite a big jump. Now, there are many people, you know, if you go for like the own brands, they're like super cheap and whatever else. But there are some children in the world with sensory issues and other issues. And there are children who will only eat certain set things. And if you've got a child like that, you can only buy those set of things. Yeah. And if you're really unlucky and you've got more than one kid as well, I mean, if you've got a family and you have more than one child in that family, you're buying even more food, you know, because you've got to be able to feed everybody, you know. But if you have a child in that family that that only has specific foods that they will eat, for whatever reasons, whether they're a SEND child or whether they just have sensory issues or whether or not they're just really that picky, or they've got an eating disorder and this is the best way to get them to eat, because you need them to be able to eat, and if they've got an eating disorder, this is how you're going to do it. You know, your prices of your shopping is going to skyrocket every time. You know, and that kind of started in 2021 as the world kind of started coming out of hiding. You know, we were making packed lunches again. We were sending the kids off to schools. We were, you know, doing all that kind of thing again. You know, and so we were buying more. We were spending more money. You know, and then and then as we hit sort of the end of 21 into 22 and we get the gas prices, oh my god, the gas shortage, and you know, everything that came with that, you know, and the lorry drivers, trying to get lorry drivers in, you know, and all that came with that too. I mean, the shortages of lorry drivers. I mean, what was all that about? I mean, seriously, you know, we had to deal with all that as a country. And then came the energy prices. You know, and I don't know about you, but there are so many companies, and I did try and find, I know a few people who have all said the same thing, that their company tends to pay more to new recruits at lower jobs than those that have been there for years at higher positions. My friend has literally, she's been a manager at her job for 6 years, to make sure she had a living wage, she applied for a new position in the same company at a lower position for more money. They advertised for a lower position than the one she's at for more money. Same company. So she applied for it. She hates her job. She hates her company that she works for. She's been desperately trying to find a new job for years. You know, but she's got a kid to take care of, and trying to balance that out with travel and everything else isn't being easy for her. So yeah, and we all know how that works too. You know, so to make sure she had a living wage, she opted for a lower position in that company that she works with now to get a living wage, which is exactly what she's doing now. Same company, lower position, living wage. And she couldn't believe she had to do that to get one. You know, and she's not the only one who's noticed that the companies are happy to pay new recruits a higher wage rather than give a pay rise to those that have been there for years, because they won't do it, because they claim there's no money in the budget to give them a pay rise, but then they'll give extra money, pay extra for newer recruits. You know, and it upsets so many people that I know. And there's just so much to unpack with this cost of living and the economy crash. But the fact that companies are behaving like that, or some companies, I don't know if all companies do it, but I know that there are a few companies that are doing that, is really, really horrible. It takes advantage of people, you know, and it hurts those that have families that have been in these companies for years. And when you can't always pay your bills as well as eat and heat your homes, you have to make those decisions and decide for yourself what's most important. And there are people on the lower end of the spectrum, of the income spectrum, that have ended up not being able to pay their bills. And so things like homelessness in England have increased due to the no-fault evictions, I think it's called, where they've not been able to pay their bills, not been able to pay their rent, because they're not getting paid a living wage. And if they're privately renting, landlords are allowed to up their rent, and they can't afford it on top of everything else. You know, and the government isn't helping them enough, if at all. You know, and the temporary accommodations that are around are not always sufficient to help them get out of that financial rut they're in, which is really horrible because it leaves them in a very vulnerable position. And yeah, there's just so much here. So I'm gonna leave it here for now and come back and do another one like tomorrow. All right.